Hey everybody, it's Chris. Welcome back. Finally getting to work on the Hercules engine in the white 2155. Some of this stuff is from a little bit ago, disassembled it, but kind of was doing things a step at a time, making sure that I wasn't going to buy a bunch of parts and then find out that the motor or the block or something was trashed. And so just kind of been taking my time with it, and everything's checked out, got all the pieces and parts I need, and starting to put things back together. In this video we start out with just disassembling, getting things cleaned up. There's some footage later in the video about the different parts and what I found. Talk a little more about it there. But fortunately everything's going good so far, and really looking forward to getting this tractor back together and seeing it work again. Spring's just around the corner, so I need to get this done and off the table and in a tractor. I've already got other video recorded to go with this, and I'll be releasing more as I get it edited and put together. But I made a lot of good progress on it this week, and I guess stay tuned. We'll keep you updated as it goes and let you follow along. Well, I got the block just about stripped down. Overall, things are looking good. Sleeves are out. I didn't take the carbon off the top, and tunking the pistons out helped drive the sleeves out. They were a snug fit, not anything that was going to require a sleeve puller to take out, which is typical for these Hercules engines. But they seem to have, the old ones seem to have a good fit. No sign of any of those being broken. They're over here. And let's see. But I just pulled the camshaft out, and I think I might be having to get another one of those, because looks like some crap went across the would that be the intake? Be one of the valves for number 6, intake exhaust. I think that's intake. But anyways, as you can see here, the face of this one really got beat up. It ain't normal looking like the rest of them. So some of that crap went through there, and I'm measuring. It looks like I lost about almost 1/10 of an inch off my lift. And feels smooth. There's a little bit of pitting from the crap going through there, but as long as I got her down this far, looks like another expense, but guess it's a good thing I just stripped her down. And been reaching up in there in the block, and there's a little bit, so I'm gonna finish stripping the block down and pull it outside and go at it with a hot water pressure washer to just really clean things out, or preliminary cleaning. That thing does an amazing job of getting oil, grease, and whatnot, and just flush everything out real good. I did take one of the new sleeves and started trying to just slip it in the hole there. I've got it cleaned up pretty good. I don't feel any high spots or anything. It's looking good. And I'm probably gonna have to put them in the freezer. It didn't want to go very far. And there's no damage at the top really of this hole. It was down a little lower where the pieces got caught along the piston where it did some scratching down in there, and that was very minor, but so looks like I got a good fit on sleeves. I'll know more later. Rear main seal was holding, but it was it's a good thing to replace that now. The lip had some wear on it. It's probably going to start seeping. Clutch looks good, but that has hardly any hours on it, so I don't know, maybe 500. So I didn't expect anything bad there. So just a little more stripping down, get the crank out of there. This thing is heavy. When I go back together, I'm going to try to use my engine stand. I might have to support it with a cherry picker. I probably will have to support it with a cherry picker. It's just a heavy engine, but boy, it makes it a lot easier to work on it when you can roll that thing around and flip it over. I'll figure something out. Forgot to add, the heads are back from the machine shop. They checked out good. Replaced the 2 valves on number 6, and everything is in really good shape. So just cleaned up the other existing valves. The guides were in good shape. Did the seats. It took about 6 thousandths off the surface to clean that up. And they are ready to get installed when I get to that point. So kind of been holding off to hear the verdict on them. Just trying to assess everything before I throw much money at it. But so that's looking good. Everything else is looking good. I'm thinking she's going to go back together. We'll figure out this camshaft too. So I got a new camshaft and lifters. And I got the new pistons and sleeves, and I got new bearings. Checked the block out for cracks. That came out good. Just a couple scratches in there. I've been reading up. A couple of guys suggested using basically Loctite sleeve retainer, and been following up on that, trying to see what the opinions are, and overall it seems to be good and a good idea, so I'm going to be using that when I install the sleeves. Help keep them more solid, probably should be better heat conduction, and just less likely to move. At first I wasn't sure about the idea. I thought maybe since they were a slide-in fit, machine fit, they needed to be able to move. You got the flange on the top that kept them from moving, but overall the overwhelming consensus is seal them up The oil that gets in, I thought that would conduct heat better. Some say that does not, slows down the conduction of heat. But oil will wick up in there. So some people just put the sealant on the bottom to keep oil from wicking up. Some do the whole surface. It doesn't take a whole lot because I mean, it's a pretty snug fit. Just trying to slide one of them into the block. It was, you got to have her lined up pretty darn good to get it even start going in. So I'm going to put them in the freezer just to shrink them a little bit so they slide in easier. Generally these Hercules sleeves, they just slide in and out by hand. Coming out, they were snug. They didn't take a whole lot of force. I basically pushed the piston out with the sleeve because the rings caught the carbon at the top, and that helped push the sleeve out. So they weren't loose by any means. And shoot, other than that, say I've got all my parts. I've cleaned that block out, blown through the galleys, or washed through the galleys, washed it. I've done all sorts of stuff to it. But, so, like I say, and then boring things like, cleaning parts, washing parts. Didn't figure you needed an hour or God knows how long of me washing parts. Some of them still need to be washed. I haven't washed like the main caps, but I like to do that right before I install them, and then I know they're good and clean. It's not like they're covered with gaskets and grime, just a film of oil, so they won't take much to wash up. So, a few more things to check out, switch pistons and check wrist pins and all that good stuff, and she'll start going together. I'm getting the pistons. They ship the pistons in the sleeves. This is the first time I've ever had them with the rings already mounted in the pistons. Guess that saved me a step. Let's see. But anyways, they also usually, like this one's got quite a bit, like Visqueen or whatever. They put a coating on them to keep them from corroding during storage. These are actually, the wrappers on these are dated March of 1991. So they've been around for a few minutes. But one of the first things we'll notice, we'll go over here. I'm going to try to show you a couple things. Here's one of the pistons that were in it, the ag pistons, which are supposed to be 17-to-1 compression ratio, if I'm right. And there's only 3 rings. There's an oil ring and 2 compression rings. Whereas the high compression piston has a deeper skirt, which makes it stand up, look like it's taller, but actually it just sticks down farther on the bottom. And it's got 3 compression rings, 1, 2, and a third one, and then an oil ring. And that's partially since it's a higher compression ratio, it's gonna have more pressure, and so that helps cut down on the blow-by having an extra ring. Extra rings also cause extra drag and friction, so it's a bit of a trade-off, and it's also extra machining for the piston. And then another thing, still got to wash these off, but the land for the top ring and this has got an insert in it to make it withstand the extra heat and compression, whereas it does not look like this one. Looks like the piston sleeve, or looks like the ring land is just cut right out of the piston, as opposed to having the insert that this one has to give it a little more strength. And the bottom 2 rings are just cut into the piston material itself, which is a forged aluminum alloy. So, compression ratio. We were 17-to-1. This is supposed to be, I think, 21-to-1. Maybe 20-to-1. I've heard conflicting stories on that. But anyways, it's higher. So what a compression ratio is the volume of air that a piston sucks in when it's all the way down. And we'll just go with easy math and say this piston sucked in 17 cubic inches. Obviously, it's way more than that. But when it comes all the way up and crams all that air into that hole, it's going to go from 17 cubic inches to 1 cubic inch. So when you compress that air, all the energy that's in it is condensed and part of energy is heat, and so your heat gets more condensed, so the air gets hotter, and that's what lights the diesel fuel when it's injected in. And so when the piston gets to the right height with all the timing and everything, diesel fuel gets injected in, the air is already hot enough to light it, boom, it burns. That's kind of why there's this slot here that kind of helps stuff mix in the bowl. This is what a MAN, which is a German company, it's actually an abbreviation, MAN, and I will have to look up what that actually means. But that kind of helps swirl in the bowl here. Combustion takes place in the bowl of the piston and forces the piston down, get your power. And so this one, if it's 21 to 1, it's going to, if it had that same 17 cubic inches, it's going to squeeze it into a smaller area than 1 cubic inch, because you're taking 21 inches of air, 21 to 1. So you're, if you still drew in 17 inches, just for our easy math on this piston, you're going to end up squeezing it down to less than a cubic inch. So you have even more heat from the compressed air. So more energy gets returned. When it burns better. Since things are under higher pressure, the piston is going to go down, and just and it also makes for a lot better starting, because you're getting more heat from compressing that air down farther. So let's see, to try to demonstrate the difference, let's see if I can do this. Maybe I need to prop something up. Oh well. So I'm just going to pour some water in this old piston at the 17 to 1. And then hopefully I can get it all in with the funnel. It's just above the edge there. Oh, see, it's running out, because this one has a smaller hole. It doesn't have as much room for that same amount of water. And what we can do is wipe that water off, get it level, and go back the other way. Oop, I dropped a little bit. So you can see, I didn't drop that much. It's, oh boy, it's a 1/4 inch below the top of the edge of the flat surface of the piston. So that demonstrates how this one has more volume, so it doesn't compress it down as far as this one. That's going to have to squeeze it into this smaller hole. That creates more heat and returns more power back to the piston. Of course, the trade-off from that is there's also more force against the crankshaft and the bearings. There's more pressure against the head gasket. So, you know, the higher the compression ratio you go, the higher or tougher your engine has to be built to withstand the higher pressures that it's exerting on it. So it's a bit of a trade-off. Better starting, snappier lower end response with the higher compression ratio. You get to the higher speeds and the turbocharger is putting out its boost, and the compression ratio doesn't matter quite as much because you can force the air in there. So a lot of engineering into designing that and doing the trade-offs. This was this higher compression piston. The reason there's 2 different available is Uncle Sam, the military, used this in their Deuce and a Half trucks, and that was their all fuel engine, but they could run several different fuel types in it, and it was because of this higher compression ratio, they couldn't run it with the lower. So the engine is designed for these higher compression ratios, and so I'm not worried about it. There's a lot of iron in those connecting rods, huge thick wrist pins, big heavy crank, and like I say, they were designed to do it, so it shouldn't be a problem. Hopefully that helps everybody kind of get a better visualization of what compression ratio is. Let's see, and you can see it's already kind of rubbed it off, but I have marked them. Whatever sleeve I took them out of, I marked them both, and it's kind of arbitrary as to which one got to be 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, and 1, other than just the order I opened them out of the package. But I want to keep number 1 piston with number 1 sleeve. They should all be identical, but just in case there's minor differences, it's always good to just keep everything together as best you can. So, and I mean, they're not even worn. It's just a good practice. So I got to wash these babies up, get the Visqueen or the protectant off from them. I'll put sleeves in the freezer so they slide into the block a little easier, and also get the Permatex, oh, the Loctite. This is the stuff I'm going to try. Sleeve retainer. All right. This might be a good place to stop this video. Don't want these things to get too long. I know myself watching videos, I like some of the longer ones, but finding time to watch a whole hour at once can be a challenge. So I'll just break this up into a few smaller videos. That way you can follow along. And so I appreciate everybody watching, and there'll be more to come. Crank goes in, cam goes in, all sorts of parts go in. Hopefully have it running soon.